Hi, everybody. My name is Kuang-Yu Fong.
And I'm Stephen Kaplan.
We are Chinese Theater Works, 纽约美华剧坊. We are so happy and honored to present the third time of Dance Forum. And today we will focus on a very special dance company last century. And we will talk about them, their ideas, and a lot of dancers who is still very active today. Stephen, would you like to introduce about CTW?
Well, CTW was founded by the two of us originally in 1995. Got that date right. And our mission is to preserve and promote traditional forms of Chinese performance, dance, opera, and my favorite, puppetry.
Music and dance.
Music and dance. And also merge those with this global style of performance that's been surfacing in these last several decades. And we feel that our work is part of this cross-cultural revolution in the arts that's happening now. And one of the ways that we foster this from our little vantage point here in Long Island City, Queens, is by holding these forums. We're bringing together practitioners and experts, directors, scholars, to talk among themselves and talk with you viewers out there in Zoom world. So that's what we're going to do today. And our moderator is Meriam Lobel. And the panelists we have are Ananya Chatterjea, professor at University of Minnesota.
You can see she is a beautiful Indian dancer. That she started her earlier career at Asian American Dance Theater.
And we have Eleanor Young, who is one of the founder of Asian American Dance Theater.
Yes, and only because of her vision, that's why so many Asian American dance can be presented, and that's why we're able to talk about it today.
And we also have the one and only Kuang-Yu Fong of Chinese Theater Works.
Yes, and I am the first college graduate students who major in Chinese opera and came to America and to started my career.
Then we also have Marlene Pitkow of New York University.
Yes, she got her PhD from the performance studies. And yes, and you can see her picture on the right. That's amazing. You won't recognize her as an Indian dancer. And she, for a few years, she also worked as a manager of Asian American Dance Theater.
And then we also have Najma Harisiadis.
Yes, she is multi-talented, not only a dancer, she's a visual arts artist and designer. And we have so much great time together, changing our ideas. And right now she's a professor at NYU.
NYU is well represented on this panel. And then finally, we have Tomie Hahn from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute.
Yeah, she is a beautiful Japanese dancer when she started, but later on she developed her career into more avant-garde. So later we will hear from everybody.
Okay.
And now we will be very, very happy to have Eleanor Young, who is going to talk about, she is one of our presenters today, just like how we introduced Chinese Theater Works, and Eleanor Young will introduce Asian American Dance Theater and Asian American Art Center.
I'm so happy to be here with many of my friends from the old days. Thank you, Kuang-Yu and Stephen and the Chinese Theatre Works for organizing and hosting this forum. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about Asian American dance and the Asian American Dance Theater. I founded the organization Asian American Dance Theater, AADT, together with my brother 50 years ago to create Asian American Dance. We changed our name to Asian American Arts Center in 1987 to reflect the strong visual arts programming under the stewardship of Bob Lee, my husband. And we did exhibitions and education at that time, while the dance part continued for many more years. It's a family affair, you see. So you can check out our website at artspiral.org. In the early 70s, I didn't see much Asian American dance in the city at all. And there's no opportunity for Asian American choreographers to create or showcase their works. That was my impetus in the very beginning. And in the process of experimenting, choreographing, and performing, I realized a lot of people actually knew nothing or very little about our heritage. There was hardly any traditional Asian dance around. There was a general misconception, mostly exotic. So I wanted to do something in response to that. Our mission became multiple: choreographing and promoting contemporary dance, presenting traditional Asian dance, education for both general public and for young people. Then later on, it stretched further to presenting Asian-influenced performing arts. From our base in Chinatown, we started out with classes for children in creative dance. I thought children, immigrant children under stress from immigration, should have the opportunity to move freely and creatively outside the confines of their homes and schools. In Chinatown, we held our first performance in traditional dance and music. Amongst the performers was a percussionist from a Mongolian community in New Jersey. I was always on the lookout for talents in the Asian communities in the tri-state area. I understand now there's a Mongolian community in Brooklyn, actually. My early contemporary piece, Madhouse, was accepted into the Clark Center for Performing Arts showcase. Clark Center was a major presenter in the city at that time. That kind of established me as a choreographer, and our New York season every year established us as a dance company. We needed that to get grants in order to continue all the other activities as well. We did well with our New York season every year, inviting a different guest choreographer to join because I wanted to provide opportunities for as many other Asian American choreographers as possible. We perform at theaters in the city and receive a lot of coverage and very positive reviews from mainstream publications like The Times and The Post and Dance Magazine and Bridge Magazine and Daily News. I won awards from the creative artists and awards from the National Endowment for the Arts. And I served on the advisory panels of the New York State Council on the Arts and the National Endowment for the Arts for many years. But my contribution representing Asian American dance to these funding agencies was very limited, as my community, our community, was small and peripheral, and an art form was outside the mainstream. It's, if not even obscure. The hierarchical order of dance in the US has always been the classical ballet, classical modern, contemporary dance, and finally small experimental dance companies from particular communities. While this defines the order of significance of American dance, classical non-Western dance in America would fall into the category of folk arts. So it was quite a struggle uphill, but we continued. AADT started presenting traditional Asian dance first in the schools, then across the nation on tours. We sought out dancers from Asia who had newly immigrated and were not able to find venues for their art. Oftentimes, they sought us out. We presented them in lecture demonstrations in elementary and secondary schools, community centers and public libraries, anywhere with an audience and for a good fee. We were asked often to perform for free, but we will never do that. Our arts are valuable, we are valuable. Free publicity is not an option. Traditional dancers were ambassadors of their individual cultures. And often it would be the first time the audience come into contact with the new culture of which they had little knowledge. The professionalism and artistry of all of our dancers were impeccable. I'm very honored to have crossed paths with them. In their performances, the dancers expressed their cultural language in beauty and aesthetics, spirituality and sublime, simplicity yet complexity as well. And most importantly, the universal art of dance. In full costume on stage, they not only enrich people's sense of their own heritage, they also open up the understanding of movement and choreographic aesthetics for Americans and artists in general. In the height of our arts and education office, which is 1 hour lecture demos in public schools, we reached 60,000 public school children in 80 engagements per year. Aside from the 1 hour lecture demos, we also provided the Indian dance and the Chinese dance intensive workshop series, accompanied by comprehensive study guides. We took the company on tour, sometimes both traditional and contemporary. We performed for audiences large and small across the country, both indoors in beautiful theaters and outdoors at festivals for large audiences. There were many people behind the scene, personnel and help, who also played crucial roles in making all these possible. The company held dense discussion about concerns of being a dancer in New York City. As a result, we started the Deja Vu series from 1986 until 1990. Deja Vu is a view of Asia. We presented performing arts by Asian Americans and works influenced by Asia. With our Chinese New Year events, we became one of those gems of New York City that was very hard to find. We were 3 flights up, straight upstairs, very hard to get to. At home, we continue our community school. All Saturdays and Sundays, we're busy with children classes. Adult classes will take place on weeknights, so will rehearsals. For many years, we had school annual recitals, bringing together the children, the parents, and the community. We had large coverage from local media, and we truly enjoyed being a community arts organization. We were very busy. I was very busy. While the dance component of the organization continued briefly into 1992, my tenure at the Asian American Dance Theater as artistic and executive director ended in 1990, and the organization became primarily a visual arts organization. Thank you for listening to my talk. And now we're going to let Mary again.
Thank you, Eleanor. I just wondered, when you recited that whole history, I remember how unique and original you and AADT were in New York City in creating a space that really didn't exist before. So thank you again.
Thank you.
We would begin the program by having everybody recount a little bit of their personal story, how they became interested in dance. We all here love dance, and probably everybody listening does as well. And so, Marlene, could you talk a little bit about how you became a dancer?
Yes. Hello, everybody, and thank you to Chinese Theater Works, Kuang-Yu and Stephen and Eleanor. This wouldn't happen without you, and I'm so happy to see everybody. Najma, I don't know if you remember me, but I remember you. But anyway, I know the bell will go off, so I'm going to get to it. I told this little story to a few of you a month ago, I think, when we were together in New York. As a 9-year-old or 8-year-old, I can't remember now, I can't do the math, maybe 7, I was in a production of The King and I at my local synagogue in Long Island. Nice Jewish girl, middle class. My mother was always one of the stars of our productions, which were really pretty high quality. We were close to New York. We'd get a lot of directors from the city and beautiful costumes. So I guess that's what did me in initially. I got to dye my hair black. It was very blonde, not so much now anymore, but and my brother and I wore these sequined gowns. I have a picture somewhere, very iconic in our family, with my mother standing between us in her tupped-him slave girl outfit with this beautiful white pearl and encrusted gown. And, you know, so for me, my first experience was one of exotic wonder of the other, and seeing my mother do the dance of Siam with the flexed feet and the, you know, doing a I don't know, a superficial imitation of what that might have been, you know, what we in our imaginations thought it was also, as somebody who already knew I had an interest in dance at that young age, I was very taken with it. So that a seed was planted, and then continued with modern dance, got a master's at UCLA, and there I was very much exposed to many Asian dancers on the faculty, Indonesian dance, Korean, Balinese, Javanese, and Bharatanatyam by my teacher was Meda Yod, who was a disciple of Bala Saraswati. And so I sort of focused on that. After those 2 years, I moved back to New York and worked at the Asian Society. So went uptown and kind of threw myself into booking performance artists from all over Asia at that time, late 70s, early 80s. There was funding for an organization like that to bring large troupes. So one of them was a Kathakali troupe in 1981, and that set me off. I had been studying sign language at the time, and I think for me, missing from modern dance was animating the face and the hands, and this gesture language was very appealing. So that led me into further research of Kathakali, and I think I'll stop for now.
Wow, what a rich history right there in a few minutes. Najma, could you tell us how you became interested in dance?
Well, I had a very interesting beginning with my guru, Kundan Lal Gangani, and his son, Rajendra Gangani, who just finished a beautiful concert at the Symphony Space and Workshop. It was so enriching to have them come here after my whole lifetime I spent with them. And I pursued Kathak because of the storytelling elements and how it blends the myth and reality. And I was very interested with Joseph Campbell, and I was very inspired. I wanted to connect all the dualities in life that we face and the cosmology, and Kathak became a cosmic drama for me. The cosmology and the sacred geometry is what inspired me to pursue Kathak. And from there on, I've discovered that flamenco has a major relation with the time cycles and the rhythmic patterns and everything. I brought this to audiences and performed many concerts with flamenco musicians. And it was a beautiful feeling to be able to correlate the rhythmic cycles and patterns from Spain. And we know that the origin of flamenco is from the gypsies who came from India. So I also was very interested in the linguistics of it. I really enjoyed bringing forth mythological stories of life through symbolic images and abstract shapes. Infinite in structure and emotional range, Kathak gave me a deep understanding of our existence through time, rhythmic patterns, and vibration, sound, evident in all forms, completing the circle of life. So it goes much deeper. It goes into the yogic aspects of our planet and the cosmic elements, which I was really fascinated in correlating the energies of the chakras and how it relates to our physical bodies. And yeah, so that's it, I guess.
That's a lot to explore, and I hope we have time to talk about it a little bit as we go on.
Sure.
Thank you. Tomie, would you like to just talk a little bit about how you became a dancer?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for bringing us all together. This is very nostalgic. I know for all of us, so nostalgic to see you all and be together as we once were dancing on the same stage. I started studying Japanese traditional dance as a child when I was 4 in Tokyo. I was born in New York, and I self-identify Asian American as well as biracial. So my story is a little bit complex in that, in just sort of understanding my identity and being raised actually quite leaning towards Asian studies and Asian background. So I started when I was 4 in Japan, and my parents thought, oh, she seemed to really enjoy this. So when we go back to New York, we'll see if we can find a teacher. And so when we came back, they found at the New York Buddhist temple on Riverside Drive in New York City, Sahomi Tachibana, who would be my teacher for a majority of my life, and studied with her, and also expanded out to other forms of more experimental studies as well as music. I'll stop there.
Just one story is more amazing than the next, really. And so global, with the connections to India and Japan and New York. Now we'll hear another connection. Kuang-Yu, would you like to tell us how you first became involved in dance?
Thank you. When I was a high school kid, it's just very hard to get into college. Maybe just 1/3 of students can get in. And me, I'm so afraid of mathematics and English. You know, this subject, I just feel like I could never get it. So I gave up these 2 subjects. I am not supposed to get into college. But just coincidentally, there is Chinese opera department started in Chinese Cultural University. So I went to this very audition, and I heard about there were more than 8 students apply for it, only 48 students be chosen. So I think it is a miracle that I am one of the 48. And then when I get into the classroom, the teachers start to teach movement. I was really in that cultural shock. I feel like because all other students, they are all very talented, very smart. Most of them have a lot of stage experience or dance or acting, but I have some music background. So it is so hard for me to learn movement because in Peking opera, all the movements are spontaneously together. So in Chinese, you say 手法身眼部. When you move, you have to go along with your eye, your hands, your right hands, your legs, your body. I can only focus on one, maybe right hands or right legs. Together, right away, I was like totally like, don't know what to do. So every class, after the class, I have a classmate always patiently teach me, every class. And then 6 years later, we both become teaching assistant in the same school. And then she told me, she said, when I was teaching you after every class, I was thinking, in this world, how could a person be so stupid that cannot do it? But that time she was very kind, very patient. She never told me that. And she told me, if you work hard enough, in the end, when you graduate, you will be the best. I don't believe her. But actually, when I graduate, I am the only students in that year able to do Drunken Beauty. And people said, so many people told me, you cannot, even my teacher, So that's how I first learned to face the obstacles about my body as a dancer. And then since that, I become TA. I work every day with my teacher for another 4 days. So usually a student got 4 years training in the college or study. I got 8 years. And when I came to America, I started to help a lot of Chinese opera performers from China to work with me, and I continue learn from them. So that's how I'm learning and process. Thank you.
Thank you for persisting. And what you have done since then is really wonderful for all of the people of New York and the US and China, where you perform on a regular basis. Eleanor, you told us how you started AADT, but you didn't tell us how you started dancing when you were a child.
Well, it seems like a lot of us started when we were very young. I started dancing when I was about 4 or maybe even earlier. I love to dance, so I would be dancing everywhere. I felt great and I enjoy myself, and dance equates happiness. So when I went to UC Berkeley, my major was sociology because I was very interested in people and their environments. And I organized a tutorial program at the Y in San Francisco because I was very concerned with immigrants and their children. Immigrants were usually not affluent, so they had to struggle. They had language difficulties, culture shock, and hard time adjusting, basically being uprooted from familiar environment into a strange and foreign land. And it's particularly true, especially for children. They were living under a lot of stress. So the modern dance choreographer who had an impact on me was Anna Sokolow. And she makes social commentaries in her dances. So I became aware that dance is not just aesthetics and skills, and it's not just happiness, but can convey very important and powerful messages. That was my education in dance as an art form. One of my first pieces, Madhouse, was really about new immigrants feeling as if they were living in a madhouse. And my dance piece, Passage, is about the journey moving from one space-time to another and the transformation while doing that. It's basically about immigration and acculturation. In the piece Origami, I thought of birds. It's like cranes, paper folding cranes. It's about the freedom to move fluidly and seamlessly, like the murmuring of starlings. It's harmonious and it has an innate resonance among these flying creatures. In Crystal Rainbow, again, a traveling piece, but this time it's a glimpse and a glimmering and the magic of timelessness of travels. And in Kampuchea, I commented on the atrocities of Pol Pot, genocide, killing people of your own kind. It was difficult and I had a hard time resolving in that piece. So when I studied Peking opera, I was very moved by my teacher, Fong, who's a contemporary of Mei Lanfang. I was moved because I could see he was dancing while he was just standing there. He was exuding the beauty and the culture through his posture, his composure, and life. So in Peking opera, when you enter the stage, you have to make a pose. It's called 亮相, like presenting yourself. So it could be done very superficially, but then it could also be done with great depth. So it was, and it's, how to convey that quality is very challenging. So I studied Tai Chi and Qigong and Chinese medicine after AADT. And I wrote a paper on the healing aspect of Qi in Peking opera, which was presented at La Mama during Sanok Li's symposium on healing dance and music. Writing that paper and studying Chinese medicine helped in understanding the role of Qi in our lives and in our art. So modern dance provided me with freedom to create. Ballet training helped build strength and stamina. And the Chinese practices in Peking opera, Tai Chi, Qigong, and even medicine helped me with the substance that I need to substantiate and enrich and empower the work that I did. So I'm here to learn more from everybody.
It's just fascinating that so many of you have spoken of the multiple aspects of dance in Asia, of the healing power, of the musicality, of the complex use of the body, of the spirituality. Did I say that already? And, it just has so many levels of participation by the person engaging in it. The next question we wanted to ask was, what characteristics of Asian dance were most appealing to you? And Marlene, you started to say in your previous statement that you really were intrigued by the use of expression and hands and facial expression, but could you elaborate on that a little bit? In Katakali.
Okay. Well, all my work and I'll say my initial interest in Katakali came from hanging out with them on tour. I didn't travel all over. I booked them, but I actually got to be with them in Jacob's Pillow when they performed. And I think just being with them in mundane ways during the, cooking and seeing how they interact and how they were dealing with being in this country was always intertwined with the dance and the stories that were done in the dance. I was attracted to the whole picture. And I ended up taking them up on the offer of going to Kerala to study at the Kerala Kalamandalam with and my Ashan, Gopalakrishnan, who was not on the tour, but he was told, several people told me he's the one to study with. And I was so taken with the discipline of this practice and the repetition of footwork and body alignment and the massage, the uri chill, which you do in the monsoon season. I was able to do that as a foreigner and a woman. And that was very special. As I said, learning this whole gesture language, I was a language major in college, so it all came to, and a dance minor. They didn't have a major at the time. And those interests and my skills seemed to coalesce in Kathakali. And I'll stop there.
And there was no turning back because you engaged with it in such a...
I engaged. I was there 10 months on that first trip in 82 and went back on Fulbright in 88 once I started at NYU in my PhD program at Performance Studies. And during a lot of that time, I was at ADT following my first trip. And getting the Eleanor's, allowing me to perform, even though, it takes many, many years to become proficient in this art form. But I managed to learn a few pieces in depth, and I was able to be on the stage and satisfied my need in part of my DNA to straddle the world of movement and managerial stuff, administrative stuff. So it was that all came together at ADT, certainly not at the Asian Society. And working with you amazing artists on all these levels was really, really a highlight, even though it was only a few years in the 80s. And the arts and education grants that I helped to write and performing and going with the dancers to schools in Brooklyn and maybe Queens. My memory is unfortunately hazy. But those were highlights to show these art forms to kids who just were in awe and thought we must have been Broadway artists and wanted our autographs. And so I'm not really sticking to the topic, but I think Najma, I want to hear from Najma.
Well, I have a similar background. One of the highlights that I experienced with Asian American is working with learning disabled children and discovering the scope of emotional wellness. It was such a pleasure to see them evolve and absorb a form using all the gestures of the gesture language and the emotional range are like no other. And they were actually doing patterns by the end of the session. And they were so grateful. It was such a rewarding experience. I can't thank you enough. And dance in itself is bigger than life. Kathak absorbs all the techniques of dance, rhythm, acting, voice, and whatever. It's infinite in structure, and it absorbs all the dualities that we're faced with today, is not understanding our identities and understanding our cultural diversity, which I was drawn to Kathak because of the cultural diversity. It actually reflects the Muslim culture with wonderful, beautiful dances that people ordinarily wouldn't gravitate to see. And I'm so grateful that I took this turn in life following Joseph Campbell's scholarly books and wonderful mythological expressions. And that's it.
Najma, I think you also have a very deep and unique relationship to music. And
Oh, yes.
I know that in Asian dance, the music and the dance are so intertwined, but you're really kind of a musician as well as being a dancer.
Well, studying Kathak dance, you have to really be able to understand how the tabla really dominates the rhythmic patterns. Then you have a time cycle. The rhythmic system of Kathak and other Indian dances is very intricate and mathematical. And I enjoyed teaching students how to articulate rhythm through rhythmic patterns. You break them down. Diggy diggy ta ta te ta. Teriki to taka diniki to taka drum. Teriki to taka diniki to taka tram. Todim da tam. Teriki to taka ta. Digateri nagateri tata gadi gana tramate. Teriki to taka drum. Teriki to taka tram. Todim da tam. And that goes into the ancient languages of Brij Bhasha in Hindi and also Sanskrit. So it's a total education. You don't need any other education other than Indian dance. It covers all the elements of the universe.
It's hard to sit still. I think the next time we have this forum, we have to have a dance workshop as part of it.
Yes.
And also it has great correlation to Greek music, which Mary can appreciate. I just see so much of the rhythmic breakdowns and through the world of dance and music. I just appreciate it more, but because I can understand the breakdown. But India has the complete study of rhythmic patterns like no other. And it goes into rap too, what I used to bring forth in the performances that we did with Asian American. Gang gang ganapati gajamuka mandala gita gita tun tat tat te jay jagabanda vakra tunga dani da Vigna hadana suka kadana danina dana dumakita tarunga gadigana te tarunga gadigana te tarunga gadigana ta. So it brings us into ancient wisdom and sacred geometry using the sounds of Sanskrit and depicting nature. It's above all, it depicts nature and the elements, the 5 elements. Panch Mahabhutam, the 5 great elements, is one of the more classical pieces. But I see this in all music, all the rhythmic breakdowns and patterns. are so interesting, especially in Greek and Middle Eastern. There's a really big correlation of rhythm, like takita taka taka takita tati tata takita tati tati. This is classical Greek kalamantiano in Greek. Takita tate kademi takita takademi takita takademi takita takademi. So you could do a Greek folk dance and not know if it's from India, from Russia, or whatever. Indian pattern of music and dance is worldwide. I don't like it being in an ethnic box. It has to be in an ethnic box just for the beginning, but as time goes on and you study it, you realize that we're all one, and we can appreciate our cultures more vividly through knowledge and enlightenment and our similarities as opposed to our differences. So there.
Now we can break in and we can bring in Tomie's experience, because I know you talked about the Indian and the flamenco and Greek, but Tomie, you were talking about Japan before, and I wonder how that might connect. And then if you could segue into how you became engaged with AADT after studying Japanese dance for so long.
Sure. Can you hear me? Yes. I love all of this. I'm learning so much, and I consider all these dancers to be sisters, so we raised each other in many ways, many ways. This is a long time ago, and I want to kind of contextualize and again go back to Eleanor to thank her and Bob, because it really does speak to the history of what's going on at this time in New York, particularly. This is an era from the 70s to the 90s. Many of us were babies, but the Asian American community was really starting to formulate more in a way that the identities started to become I guess I should say it was after the civil rights movement. Asian Americans were learning a lot and marching alongside all different peoples and working towards liberation. And so this is a time period that's really important when Basement in Chinatown was started, Bridge Magazine. I worked at Asian Cinevision and Bridge Magazine before coming to Asian American Dance Theater. And this is the period of Fred Ho playing in the Jazz Coalition, mixing jazz and Asian forms. So it was a very exciting time period in New York City, and a lot of discussions about what it is to be Asian American, even because first generation people were coming and not really understanding the connections between Asian communities, and why are we being lommed together in a way, in a pan-Asian kind of a way. So it's very confusing yet very exciting transitional time period in history. So Bob and Eleanor really had that vision and really could see from that perspective time changing and the need for people to develop more of a vocabulary of identity within various communities. It's also the era of Yuri Kochiyama, who worked very closely with Malcolm X. So Yuri Kochiyama was actually one of our dance mothers. She was the grandmother of one of my dance partners in the Japanese American community. So a lot of this is very, very fluid. The things that Najma, everyone actually is saying, I learned a lot about the body and how the body tells stories through many, if not all, of the Asian traditional performing arts, and that the various art forms aren't really separated, you know, like music, dance, costuming, visual arts, but a lot of the performers are very, very high level artists in what we would say other fields, but they're musicians, as Najma's demonstrating so beautifully to us, that that they're musicians as well as moving bodies. So the expressive body was something that really struck me. You know, I was just in my 20s at this time period, and so I was just trying to understand who I was and where I fit in with various people, going to Chinatown and learning more and more about this in the Asian American community, various kinds of community centers. So this was a really huge growth period for a lot of us. It's also the period of the Clinton era where multiculturalism came and spread throughout the United States. So I feel really fortunate that that Eleanor and Bob had that vision of moving us into the schools, because we were doing these amazing school programs, as has already been discussed. But I kind of wonder, in many ways, if we learned more than the children did, because as we're telling the story of the body and actually framing it and subtitling it, having all the dances, I mean, and also having the children dance with us, it helped to communicate in a very deep, embodied way the kinds of things that we were just learning ourselves in many ways. So I, again, give thanks for that vision, because it's so powerful. And then a lot of us went off and became professors in various schools, in performance studies, and in ethnomusicology and other fields. So it spread like wildfire for us in this sisterhood. Yep. I don't know if I answered the question, but there we go. Framing.
That was really great framing, and so interesting to hear it tied into the history, this sociocultural history of the time, which I think was very much part of Eleanor's consciousness and what you were saying about immigrants being kind of lost, but you found such a beautiful way to give voice, and by bringing all these people together, and also by working with families and children in the community in Chinatown.
Right. Yeah.
It's so interesting, right, that three of you went on to become professors at colleges.
Yeah.
After working as dancers, but because the dance is so complex and it requires so much of your mental, psychological, and physical attention, that I can see how it led to university careers. But does anybody else, Kuang-Yu, do you want to say how your experience at AADT influenced your life and career?
I think AADT is so important to me. And first, I want to say how I become involved with AADT was because I was taking my master's degree at NYU, and one day I gave a Peking opera lecture demonstrations for Richard Schackener's class. And Tomie, that's how I started. And then Marlene is one of the students. And Marlene afterwards, she said, I work for Asian American Dance Theater. Would you like to come to the studio to have an audition? And that time, I don't know what this audition means. I just went there, struggling, find my way to the third floor. And then fortunately, director Eleanor know what is Chinese opera, knows what is Kuang-Yu. So I just did performance in front of her with no music, without anything. And I was hired. That's how I was involved. And I think as an immigrant, this company gave me as an immigrant a chance to do my first original performance. I think before the Chinese New Year, Eleanor asked me, she said, could you create something? Not so much, just a little bit. But I worked with Bert Wexler, that time my friend. We create a show a day at the office. And I was so nervous. And because I just did like 5 rehearsals, and for 15 solo, I'm on the stage alone. And I was thinking, if I forgot one word, English is still very hard for me. If I forgot the first one, I will forget everything. I will be like full on the stage. But I like to take risk. I did it anyway. And the audience in New York are so warm-hearted. And I started like a third words when I talk, when I speak out, audience start to laugh. And that moment I relaxed. And then I did not forget the words. I did not forget any movement. I did it. And then later, Eleanor asked me to put, when we tour, I think one of the best part of Asian American Dance Theater is when we were in the touring, especially for the university, the first half of the program is traditional dance from Asia. And then after intermission was contemporary pieces done by different Asian dancers, So almost put me into the as a last program. And I was wondering, I said, maybe that's not so good as a last program because solo is kind of light. I'm afraid it's not heavy, strong enough as a final. And I remember Eleanor say, I think that's fine. The reason I want to put that a day at the office in the end of program is I want audience go home laughing because it's a comedy. And I still remember, once I did a day at the office in another college in the Massachusetts. I forgot which college it is. And Tomie was in front of me. And Tomie did a show about, Nixon, who lied, Tomie used the whole recording of the president lying. And when it is my turn, when I do my solo, it was so quiet, so quiet, and it's so different from any other performance. I said, what's going on? So I was smiling, performing, but in my mind, I was quickly analyzing the situation. And then right away, I understand because the heaviness of Tomie's piece is, is so important issue about the leader of America is lying to the public. So I say, okay, that's not my fault. It's not my it's not the problem of my performance. I just need to keep pushing. So I just told myself to come and I perform. And then students start to laugh so hard that I cannot hold my laughter. So I have to turn around and I have to smile at the manager next to me to release my anxiety. So so that was so interesting, one of the tour. And then surprisingly, Eleanor submit a day at the office to apply a grant. And then and that time I wasn't in America like 3 years yet. So my friend told me, the first person got it, Yong Cui. She has been here for so many years and she's teaching at Marcel Graham School. And you just came here for less than 3 years. It's not possible for you to get a grant. But I got it for $5,000. And that $5,000 was so important to me because I am a freelancer performer. So I don't have steady income, but that $5,000 helped me to go through whole year as a base. And then after I graduate, I asked Eleanor, is she willing to support my work visa? She said yes. Is she willing to help me to get green card? And then so she helps me to get my first full-time job in the office. And I have to work as a receptionist in front of the door. And then one day, and I remember we have weekly meetings, usually have come like 3 hours. The first hours I was full of stress, and second hours I can handle, but third hours listening to 3 hours English, I was in the air, like in the cloud. And I feel like my English is not good enough. But Eleanor told me, she said, among all of the people pick out the phone and write the notes, Kuang-Yu did the best. You know why? Because my English is the worst. My English is not good. So every time people call me, I have to ask them, how do you spell your name? So Mary in different spelling, I always got the right one, such as Mary. So I got so many so many things happening in my immigration, the beginning of life, this new life, and Asian American Dance Theater helped me so much in every steps. And and when I established our company with Stephen, one day Eleanor and Bob show me one thing at the front. They came to our fundraiser and give me a very special gift. And that gift was in the Asian American Dance Theater Art Center for many years. Do you remember this one, this frock?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So Bob said, I have finished most of our work. You and Stephen need to continue. Please take it. Take it and following our work. So in one way, Chinese theater works like extension of Asian American Art Center from Manhattan to Queens. So now you know how important the support I got from Asian American Dance Theater. Thank you.
I feel like it's all a continuing story of the evolution of Eleanor's initiative, really, that allowed everybody to flourish in such a unique way. And one of the things that you just mentioned, Kuang-Yu, was that Tomie created a piece about Nixon. And Tomie, you only told us about your study of classical Japanese dance, but I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you found a way to do more creative and experimental dance, maybe based on your Japanese dance, or could you just talk about that a little bit?
So I have one correction. I'm sorry, Kuang-Yu, my friend. It was Reagan.
So Reagan, yes, not
That is the
Nixon.
time period. Because he was famously saying, we begin bombing in 5 minutes. And so many groups, underground groups in New York were making posters and working through that era, which was so difficult for us. So anyway, I think experimental performance had always been sort of riding side by side with my traditional work. But it's also, well, it's been a little bit of a difficult road. So I made sure that I always discuss with any of my teachers, my formal traditional teachers, whether it was music or dance or theater, that they knew that I was doing these other art forms. It came to be that I would use a different name, actually, because I was initiated into the Tachibana school. So I have a name that's my lineage within that school. So whenever I do traditional dance, I use that name. And yet my headmaster in Tokyo had actually no problem with me doing these very unusual, very avant-garde dances, because basically she said no one would ever imagine that you're doing traditional dance at this point, even though I would have something that would I guess what fascinated me from this time period is how we come to learn through the body, and that ended up being setting the course for what I would do in my scholarly life, is how does the body come to know about culture, come to embody culture, and how do we pass down culture through that embodied knowledge. And I became so fascinated by that, and it has its roots in this time period when we were experimenting and doing all sorts of interesting school trips. I think we were all learning how to articulate the complexity of Asian dance in all of our different forms and convey that to school children, K through 12, as well as college students in very short periods of time. And that ended up really fascinating me, because it shot me into a more of a maybe a scholarly / performative arena, where I was thinking about what is embodiment and what is it that what is learning? How do we come to learn movement? It's unlike music and other forms, because it's oftentimes not written down, but it's passed down from teacher to student directly, especially throughout Asia, learning through doing. So that became a really fascinating aspect of what would become my scholarly life, but it has its roots here. Even though I was experimenting and doing other kinds of pretty wild performances. I guess I should also mention that performing with all of these sisters had a significant impact on me as well. And I'll tell you a story that comes from backstage that no one maybe would get, but I'm going to wait for the smiles here. One of the things that really fascinated me going on tour and to these school events was learning in the dressing room how similar and also how different these various Asian styles were. I had no idea what the undergarments, for example, were like. in any of these other forms, how the feet were used. I think it was really funny when I was out on tour with Arundhati Chattopadhyaya, right, who's in India now, and she would be putting on bracelets. She was doing Bharatanatyam and putting on bracelets. Meanwhile, I was taking off everything, so that nothing would jangle around, But so that was dissimilar, in that sensibility of the aesthetic. Yet there were so many other things, like the carriage of the body, the gripping to the earth and the communication of the body to the earth, much like Tai Chi with and Eleanor's love of the grounded body, and how from that groundedness we can do so much with that power of connecting to the ground and then moving out, right? The spirit and the chi, or ki in Japanese, moves from that central strength of the body connected to the earth and drawing from the earth and the core of the body, and then moving outward. And so being able to actually see that from the very start, from, oh, what shoes or socks is she wearing? What do they put on their legs? How are they binding, this or that? The breasts were bound, back, for example, or, how are they padding the costume or not padding the costume? All these things were so fascinating to me. In my 20s, I had no clue. And so it opened up a whole world. Makeup is a whole other story, and maybe Marlene even wants to talk about that one, but makeup and the expressive body gaze of the eyes and the face, and how it's used to impart stories. Wow. That really changed my life, from understanding sort of the embodied knowledge that I had of Japanese traditional dance, to then fan out to, oh, that's so similar to Peking opera or Kathakali, Kathak, other style, Bharatanatyam for sure. How the body's used to tell stories. There are nuances across Asia that are so lovely to see, but for me, it started, those sparks of understanding started in the dressing room, believe it or not. And there's nothing X-rated about this. We all like clothes are flying and all of this stuff, but because dancers are like that, right? But that understanding of how the body is treated, right, in order to go forward and perform. Amazing. And I don't know if I've even said this to Eleanor, but those are the kinds of behind the scenes learning that you can't trade. Yeah, they're just so deep and really influenced me deeply.
It's great.
Also, I'd like to add that most of the Indian classical dances is an oral tradition. So it's passed on orally, and it gets into your muscle memory forever. Once you embody those rhythmic patterns, it's forever. It's such a beautiful feeling that things that I noted writing down, I can't make out what I wrote down, but I can digatari, nagatari, tata, kadiganatram. Jaga jaga, teri kita takanaga, teri ginatunga. If I wrote that down, I'd look at it 6 months later, I'd never remember what it was. But there's a lot to say for the oral tradition.
And the body to body transmission of,
Even the shape
and
of the
because
body.
I'm sitting here listening to you, it's been a long time since I've practiced Kathakali. I actually did detour into flamenco, and yeah.
Well, we both have that in common.
Yeah, right. But I'm sorry, Kuang-Yu, I just want to, while Tomie was talking, I was like in my body was doing some gestural and, spiraling and I don't know, just feeling the feeling when I was practicing. So it's in there, even though I don't do it.
I feel like Chinese, working with everybody, working with Indian dancer, Japanese dancer, Filipino dancer, make me realize it. Asian dancer or performing art have one similarity, which is performers' art. They are not, the text is not as important in the West theater. So in the Eastern performing art, how we express as a human being could be so different, but that's our core as performer. And we have such a strong and training, body training or aesthetics is when you say, you can use just one word, tradition. That tradition was, no matter you are Indian or Japanese or Chinese, it's like a generation to generation passed down, and you have a particular pattern, aesthetics mind, what is beautiful, what is important. And I remember working with Sang Ak Lee, doing educational program. As everybody else, I just remember she was emphasizing her energies, breathing, how breathing related to movement. And she described it in such detail. Let me understand, breathing is so important in Korea performance dance. And she can explain this so well because I think she probably also her scholarly training in the West. And I find that in this group, most of us got master's degree and many of you got PhD. So you are thinking in depth how to describe the Asian performance. And we are able to get together, performing together and understand not only your culture and everybody's culture, Asian culture, and what is the Asian different from Western dance. So I think that's so important, that to have organizations like Asian American Dance Theater offer this platform for us to communicate and interact each other. And I remember once we were, AADT was invited to perform for Lincoln Center Outdoor Festival. And so we had a discussion in the office and talking about, is this possible for all our dancers dancing on the stage at the same time? And right from the beginning, I remember somebody said, no, that's not possible because we're so different. But I remember I said, how about we choose same subject and everybody using that subject and express? Do you remember? So we come out a dance, like using the body movement, but which we share the same idea. So I think that was such an important moment in the dance history, to have that. Like Najma, when I work with Indian dancers, that reminded me Chinese opera percussionist music. That's the same thing. That they, so we have that kind of similarity using the rhythm to do liangxiang or do the fighting. And I always wanted to say, hey, I really hope that time I wanted to work with Indian dancer to use different rhythm and percussion to do some kind of collaboration.
No, we were going to, there's way too much to talk about, but we were going to ask for questions from anybody listening. I don't see any questions, but I do see that Marie Alonso has been here the whole time. And I thought, Marie, do you want to say something about how your relationship to AADT influenced your life, or anything else you'd like to say to anybody else on the panel?
Aloha, it's great to see you all. Oh my God, it brought me back to like how many decades ago? It's weird. No, this is great to see y'all, and it's like each of your stories reminded me, oh yeah, that's right. Oh yes, because I'm in a total different field now that it's kind of, this feels like, it's really weird. It's like surreal, like, oh, did I really do that too? No, this is so just so exciting to see what everybody has been doing and how they got into Asian American dance. But I don't know if you remember, Eleanor, there was a dancer, I think her name was Amanda. Was it Amanda that danced with you? And she was the one who, I was at NYU, and she said, do you want to dance for this company? They're having auditions. And was that Amanda? I can't remember her last name, but she was a beautiful dancer at NYU. And so then I said, oh sure, okay, let me try. So that's how I ended up. And the difference between all of you, or in a different way, I grew up in Italy. So for me, the Asian thing was very weird. We were always the minority, but I don't know, we were just expats. We are just passing through, right? Because my dad was working there. So, but we had a little Filipino community, but it was never, I mean, I didn't make a big issue about my identity until I realized in the States, it's very different. Yeah, you're an immigrant. You have a green card, you're an alien. So it's a different, and that didn't sink in until for a few more years and more experience in the States, and it makes me think of all these other experiences. But no, how did I get into dance? Ballet. I was sick. I was a sickly child, and there was a ballet class in where my mom used to teach physics at Meriam, and that's how I started. And as the only Filipina in an Italian school, I was called the muted H. The H is never pronounced in Italian, right? It's, so because I was quiet, because of course, at home they spoke Filipino and English, and then I go to Italian school, so I was totally messed up. That's why it took a while for me to even learn English the right way, because it's so confusing. But so that's to me, dance was a place like of refuge, where I can express myself. Nobody has to hear what I'm saying, I don't have to use my language. So that was to me very, very important. So, and I kept that. And I think even now, wherever I go, wherever I move, I always try to find my dance community so that I would feel at home. So, and just one little thing, because I know this go on, but one thing about Hawaii, for the first time in the United States, I felt I belong, or even in my life, because I was always the only one. And it was so great now to feel that people think I'm local, but I'm not. So I'm not the other, yet I'm really the other. So it's really interesting to, what I've learned about myself and how I see myself and how others see me. I don't dance that much. I dance socially only. I do partner dance, which is so different. And every now and then I do solos. I've done solos in the last 2 years because we were all in Zoom, and friends of mine had all these digital concerts. And so I'm like, oh, okay, let's do something here and there. but yeah, but definitely Asian American Dance Theater offered like a whole new education to me. I mean, I didn't know what pecking opera is. I didn't know that there were Muslim dances in the Philippines. I mean, I feel like I was totally so ignorant about my own my own culture as far as dance. I only knew food, but that was it. So I've learned so much about Indian dance. I didn't even know there are different kind of Indian dances. So I learned so much. So it was a great educational part of my life. So thank you, Eleanor. And thank you everybody for educating me about each of your dances in all these tours. Honestly, yeah, that's it. I'm done.
I'm going to pass it to Kuang-Yu in 1 second to thank everybody and say we have to close. But you know what you just said is that you felt that you belong in Hawaii. Makes me feel that Asian American Dance Theater was all about exploring what does belonging mean and where do we belong. And then we can tie that into what Tomie was saying, that really we belong in our body, and the body is the way we can express our identity. So it's so complicated with our sociocultural lives and our human lives, but I think dance really has been the key for all of us. And thank you all for your wonderful comments, and I'll let Kuang-Yu and Stephen close it out. This was really great.
There are
Thank you, Mary.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. And as I mentioned from the beginning, that there are so many Asian dancers got an opportunity to be presented, to perform in the stage, theater, schools, libraries, museums, festivals. We got such great experience that usually when I was in Taiwan, we performed just on the stage, in the theater. But in America, Asian American dance theater brought us to different corner of America so get to know American and get to know America and get to know so many friends from different corners of Asian and gathering and working together. So without Asian American Dance Theater, we are not able to have this wonderful experience. And as I said, so many dancers haven't got a chance to be part of it. This is the only first one. We hope we got the second one or third one talking about this wonderful experience. Stephen, would you like to?
I just want to say I feel very fortunate to be kind of getting pulled along by on this path. Very different than my cultural background, but I feel especially with the puppetry, it's very easy to make this leap. And with Kuang-Yu, I think because of her kind of unique background, that also made it possible. I just do the tech and drive around.
Yes. Eleanor, do you have something to say?
Yeah, I just want to say that I want to repeat myself. I feel very honored to have crossed paths with so many talents and so many dancers and musicians and very talented people in what I was doing. And I think in hindsight, I was trying to do too much. So I missed a lot of opportunities in a way to communicate and connect with everybody that I've known. So I kind of only get to superficially know a lot of people and never got into in-depth relationship with so many. But I feel very honored and I'm very happy and I'm very thankful. Thank you, Kuang-Yu and Stephen, for hosting this. I think it's really an opportunity for me, especially. Thanks.
It seems like you can never do too much because there's so much there to do. How can you do too much? You can do as much as you can. That's the best thing.
And I feel like not only talking about the art and dance, during the years we worked together, I really gained so many interesting friend and friendship. And I remember Tomie asked me, she said, have you ever listened to the jazz music in America? I said, no. So very soon she invited me to go to Curtis, her husband, a husband to be that time, to listen to jazz music. And Janaki, another American dancer who does the Indian dance, she asked me, you are a Chinese opera performer. Have you ever seen Western opera? I said, no. So she invited me to Lincoln Center to listen to the Western opera. And I got a chance to participate Marlene's wedding. So what I think my experience is like everybody else. We have such lifetime friendship that our life experience was crossing like a fabric and will still continue. And but everything started with Eleanor and Bob started Asian American Dance Theater. So we all have to say thank you, Eleanor and Bob.
Thank you.
And thank you, Marlene, thank you, Mary, to host and organizing this forum. And thank you, Tomie and Najma and Marlene to be part of it. And unfortunately, Ananya got some accident, so she's not able to be here. So hopefully next time she can be part of it.
And thanks to all the people of the Zoomiverse who are watching this.
And I will
watch this in the future.
And I want to thank Charlie Santos, our stage manager for the forum. Thank you and see you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye.
We all need this more than ever going into this new world.
Yes.
We had something very real then. Now it's got to be reinvented again to go
Yes.
into this new course that we've taken. Nobody knows, but
Nobody knows.
nobody knows.
Well, that makes it exciting.
And I'm so honored to be part of this. And I want to thank you, Eleanor and Bob, for recognizing Indian dance and me as an artist. And the wonderful years you gave me in arts and education was a real dream. Because enlightenment comes from culture.
Yes. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
I don't want to say
See
goodbye.
you again.
I want to say goodbye.
I
So whenever you told me whenever you go to New York, we have to get together. Let us know.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, who's gonna push the button?
See you soon.
Bye.
Everybody, thank you,
Thank
Bye.
you.
including me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.